All right, guys, it's Barry from the YANMAR Academy. Today we're talking pre-operations check on the Bull Series and Longhorn Series UTVs. Today I'm doing it on my Black Angus edition. Tools that we will need are a 14 and 19 millimeter socket, a ratchet, a 5-inch extension, a torque wrench, a rag, and a tire gauge. Throughout all of these, make sure that your UTV is parked on a flat level surface. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, guys, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna jump in the cab. We're gonna check the brake pedal. What we're doing is we're checking for free play in the pedal itself. So go ahead and apply a little bit of pressure to that brake pedal. If you do find that your brake pedal has some free play in it, go ahead and get hold of a YANMAR authorized dealer and get your brake system checked out. Next, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the master cylinder and check the fluid in it. All right, so on to our next check. What we're gonna do is we're gonna check the master cylinder. If you got a machine of this caliber, you gotta have some serious stopping power. So what we wanna do is we wanna check this cup here, and we wanna make sure that our brake fluid, which is .4 brake fluid, is in between the minimum and the maximum level. If it's too low, you're gonna have a chance of not being able to stop when you need to. And if it's too high, then you take a chance of blowing out some calipers and seals in your system. This one here seems to be good. Our next check, while we're down here, we gotta check for any brake fluid leakage. Check all your fittings on your master cylinder, check the cap of the master cylinder, and just check in the general area, make sure there's no brake fluid dripping out. We're good here, so let's move on to the next check. The next check's gonna be, we're gonna check all 4 tires. We gotta check the calipers at each tire to make sure there's no leakage there. On the inside of the tires, you'll find the caliper, find the brake line feeding into the caliper, rub around it, make sure there's no brake fluid leaking. This one here is good, so we'll move on to the next one. All right, now we've moved to the back of the machine, back behind the passenger seat. We're gonna check the engine oil. Engine oil is right down here. So what you wanna do is grab your rag, wipe down around that oil dipstick, make sure you don't transfer any dirt or debris from the engine itself into that dipstick plug. Pull the dipstick out, give it a quick wipe, stick it back in, make sure you seat it all the way, pull it out again, and then we'll check the engine oil level. You've got a low level down here at the bottom, and then a high level up here at the top. What you want to do is make sure the oil's somewhere in between those 2 lines. If it's below, then you want to add oil. Your oil's too low and you're going to take a chance of blowing up your engine. If it's too high, then it's too much oil and you want to drain some because you take a chance of blowing out some seals. This one here is good, so we'll move on to the next check. All right, moving on along, we're going to come down here to the front passenger side. We're going to check the engine coolant level. What we want to do is we want to check the reservoir here. It has a low mark as well as a full mark. We want to ensure that your coolant is somewhere in between the low and the full. If it's below the low, you need to add some coolant to it, otherwise you take a chance of blowing your engine up. And if it's too high, then you can take a chance of the reservoir overflowing. This one here is good to go, so we'll move on to our next check. Next thing I want to check is the final gear oil here. It's on the back side of the machine. We're going to go ahead and pull this bolt off. First, take your rag, wipe around it, that way you don't transfer any dirt from the back of the machine into that bolt hole. So now the bolt's out, we want to verify the oil level. What you want to do is make sure that the oil level is at the bottom side of the bolt hole. This one's good to go. If yours is low, you want to go ahead and add some. That way you don't take a chance of locking up your transmission. Next, we'll go ahead and put the bolt back in. Get our torque wrench. Want to torque the bolt to 16 foot-pounds. All right, next check's going to be the accelerator pedal. What we want to do is we want to make sure that it is smooth operation. And once we get it down to the bottom, just go ahead and release it and make sure that it springs back to the idle position. This one's good. Moving on along, we're going to check our next thing, which is going to be our seat belts. What you want to do is you want to pull the seat belt out. You want to check the webbing itself for any tears or frays. Once you get it all the way out, you want to release it and make sure it retracts itself back in fully. Then what we want to do is we want to make sure that it locks properly. So what we want to do is pull out a little bit and then give it a nice jerk, firm tug to where it will lock itself in place. It locks in place. Then what we want to do is make sure that the latch fits into the buckle and releases when I release it. Our seat belts will keep us in place. All right, next we're gonna check the passenger handhold. What we want to do is check, make sure that the pins are secure and there's no damage to them. Then grab the handhold itself, give it a good firm tug, make sure it's not loose, and we're good. Moving on, we're gonna check our steering wheel. We're gonna turn it left, we're gonna turn it right. What we're looking for is any excessive play, any abnormal noise, or any rough feeling as we're turning the wheel. We're good to go. All right guys, moving on. What we're gonna do is we're gonna check our display panel here. So first thing we wanna do is turn power onto the machine. Then what we wanna do is we wanna start looking at lights. First light we wanna make sure is engaged is my parking brake light. It's on. Next thing what we wanna do is we wanna run our transmission through its paces. So we put it in reverse, ensure the reverse light comes on, shift it back to neutral, high, low, then back down to neutral. So it's shifting great. Next thing we want to check is up here, the green light, make sure that the helmet warning is illuminated. Moving down, make sure our seatbelt is illuminated as well. And then we're going to move into our four-wheel drive and check it. I'm going to shift it over to four-wheel drive, ensure that the four-wheel drive display comes on. Shift it to diff lock, make sure my diff lock light comes on, and it says diff lock on my display. We're good there. Go ahead and shut it back off. Grab your lights, turn your headlights on. Low beam, make sure they're working. Turn them on the high beam, make sure they're working. Tap your brakes a couple times. Make sure your brake lights are checked and working. And we're good to go. Move on to the next one. Next, we're gonna move on to our tires. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna inspect the tire, make sure there's no damage or any gouges in the tread. Around the front face of the tire and rub around the inside, make sure there's none, and we're good. All right, next we're gonna grab our tire gauge and we wanna verify air pressure. On these machines, you want 11 PSI in the front and 15 PSI in the rear. This one's good. Next thing we're gonna do is make sure our torque on our lug nuts are good. Move on to the back tire. This side's good. Remember, you'll do the other side the exact same way. All right, so the final check is gonna be our CV Axel Boots. What I'm gonna do is walk around, make sure that none of them's tears, there's no holes in it that'll allow contamination into it. Check with your inner, then go move into your outer. Just remember, all four wheels are done exactly the same. These are good. So there you have it, guys. Quick, simple, easy job, but one that's very important to keep your UTV rolling at maximum performance. Until next time, I'll see you at the YANMAR Academy.